Welcome to Chuck Builds. Today we're talking about smart plugs. I'm going to walk you through some of my tips and recommendations and things to consider when purchasing. But first, I'm going to show you how I use my smart plugs. In my office, my monitors and PC and lights and everything are connected to a smart plug, so it turns on when I'm in the room and turns off when I'm not, making sure that I don't waste any power by leaving it on. I have a receiver for my backyard speakers and I love turning it on remotely. I have a light when I enter my garage tied to that door so that I never enter a dark room and that when I leave, I don't forget to turn it off. This is where form factor really matters when I stack two smart plugs on top of each other, one being Zigbee and one being Wi-Fi. In my backyard, I have a Casa outdoor double outlet controlling my string lights. The Wi-Fi enabled string lights were more than double the price, and this gives me smart functionality for cheap. This is the Casa plug with two outlets and it's Wi-Fi enabled and stays out in the rain. Also in my garage, I have dumb LED lights in each corner that automatically turn on when my garage door is opening, ensuring that I come home into a well-lit garage that automatically turns off when the door is closed and I'm no longer in there. This is a huge quality of life improvement when you're getting home late from the airport or something. I've had many different types of smart plugs over the years for many different reasons, and I've got a couple of tips I want to share with you to make sure that you purchase the best smart plug for your use. Let's dive in. When purchasing a smart plug, there's a lot to consider. The first and foremost would be the protocol that you choose to support with your plug. Whether you decide to choose a Zigbee or Z-Wave plug that will act as a repeater or router and strengthen your network, or choose something like a Wi-Fi plug that can act as a power monitor. When choosing a Wi-Fi plug, I strongly urge you to consider the manufacturer and whether or not the plug will be using a remote third-party server outside of your network to operate. I really like these Sonoff plugs because I can flash Tasmota on them and run them locally through MQTT. They're really fast and I get power monitoring for under $10. I have a couple of TP-Link plugs with the Casa app, and that was okay. Got started with those. They lack a little bit of features that I prefer. I do, however, still use the outdoor plug from them, as this has really held up to the Texas elements and allows me to control my lights outside. I no longer use this TP-Link indoor plug or this Wemo indoor plug, both because of their constricting apps and their requirement of a third-party server not on my home network. They're simply more expensive, they're slower, and they have less features. There's no reason to buy these. If you already have a Zigbee network or a Z-Wave network, I would strongly encourage you to get at least a few plugs in that protocol to have around your home. You don't have to use any of the smart functionality, just simply have it connected to power, plugged into a lamp and always on, or just off in the corner, always off. And it will strengthen your network and help fill in those dead spots on your mesh network. I do like the Zigbee plugs that I have here. They are really cost effective. They've strengthened my Zigbee mesh network and they are really responsive through Home Assistant. Outside of the wireless protocol that you choose for your smart plug, the physical dimensions of the plug should be strongly considered. One reason that I do not like this TP-Link plug is it is huge. If I were to plug it in on a low point, I've lost access to 4 plugs, 2 above it and 1 below it, including the one in use. To me, that's unacceptable that I have to give up a whole outlet for 1 plug that has really no special features. These smaller form factor plugs that are wider but not as tall, I really quite like, as because you can stack them usually and not lose too much real estate. But I found that both plugs have a physical dimension in either direction that is taller than the other direction, preventing you from truly stacking on top of each other. For the Sonoff, it's the above section is thicker, and on the Wemo, it's the bottom section that's thicker. So the Wemo, for instance, cannot be plugged into this power strip as it would not fit, but the Sonoff will fit quite comfortably. And to me, that is a huge benefit, being able to plug multiple in. But as you can see here, we lose the top grounding plug of this next outlet. If you were to use a 2-prong, such as a USB charger, this might not be a problem for you, but knowing that you can't go on top with the 2 smart plugs could be a deal breaker, or at least something to be aware of. Being able to fit multiple plugs onto a outlet or a strip could be important to you if you're trying to seek control without overloading anything, especially if there's power monitoring to make sure that you're not pulling too much power at one time. I do not like the trend of these round outlets because you can't plug it in next to anything as it covers the top and bottom plug. This doesn't apply all the time, but I do like the thinner form factor because you can plug in directly on top of another plug, and whether that's above it or below it depending on your form factor. I quite like the form factor of these detached plugs or pigtail plugs where the plug is separated from where you would add your additional devices. I feel like this gives you just so much more flexibility in where you can put them. It's not the most compact option, but especially outside, being able to get them away from the rain or being able to plug it in inside of a weatherproof cover has been a great option. Despite the Wi-Fi shortfalling of this Casa smart plug, it's been pretty reliable for me. I just don't trust it to be that fast. So something like turning on the lights when you walk in the room, I would not choose this plug. When considering advanced features, you should really pay attention closely as to what plug you're getting. These 2 plugs look identical in all areas except their actual model number, where this is the Zigbee model and this is the Wi-Fi model. The Wi-Fi model I have here has power monitoring, and that is because Wi-Fi can support that constant stream of data, whereas Zigbee can only check in every now and then with an on and off signal and current state. When choosing to control any device in your smart home, I strongly encourage you to choose the local option, whether it's smart plugs, cameras, switches, or bulbs. You want to make sure that you have a quick, reliable connection from inside of your home. There's no reason to have an outgoing or incoming internet connection to control the devices that you own. When choosing a plug, such as the Sonoff S31 that has power monitoring, I really enjoy how fast it is with the local MQTT control. When choosing a Wi-Fi plug that leaves the home, such as the Casa, it's still usable, it's just noticeably not as fast, and I have had times where my lights aren't working because their servers are down. To me, that's just unacceptable and easily avoidable at a fraction of the cost by choosing something with Tasmota or Zigbee or Z-Wave. When choosing an application for smart plugs, you need to strongly consider your electrical requirements of that application. All of these plugs will have a label on them saying how many amps they can take. This one is limited to 10 amps to safely operate. This Wemo plug is good for 15 amps, but has an 1800 watt resistive load or a half horsepower. So this would be not a good choice for any kind of motor or compressor in your shop. These Sonoff plugs are rated at 15 amps, but have no mention of resistive or inductive loads. But because they're certified by the ETL certification or the TP-Link, which has been certified with the UL certification, I do tend to give them a little bit more trust on placing them out of sight and out of mind for a higher current load. But whatever you plug in, you need to be smart that you're not daisy chaining power strips or putting too much electrical load to where one of these could be compromised, get too hot, or even catch on fire. And if you have many items that you want to plug in and monitor power or individually control, sometimes individual plugs such as these will not be your most cost-effective option. I do not actually have any, but I have seen many power strips, UPSs, and surge protectors with individual plug control, some with power monitoring, some without. They tend to be pretty well priced for the number of individual controls that you get. Another thing to consider is the actual interface of the device that you want to put on a smart plug. This fan has a physical knob on the top, and so when you turn the plug on, the fan starts. But if we were to swap this for this other fan here that has touch capacitive buttons on the top, if we were to turn this on, this fan does not turn on. Even if we had it on in a previous state, it doesn't restore from power loss. So something like this is worth thinking about when choosing your smart plug, because not all devices are conveniently turned back on. To elaborate on this point, I want to share a mistake that I made. I purchased this top floor fan to filter the air in my office, not realizing the buttons were touch capacitive, and I thought I was saving money by getting the cheaper version. It was $50 cheaper than the smart version, but I cannot turn it on and off with my smart plug. Don't make the same mistake I did. Make sure you get a fan that has physical controls that would persist after it turns on and off. To walk you through my thought process when choosing a smart plug for an application, I first typically consider whether or not I want power monitoring. If I do, I will choose a Wi-Fi plug. And my go-to Wi-Fi plug right now is the Sonoff S31 with Tasmota flashed on it. This plug is so cheap, with 2 for $16, that I feel comfortable placing them all over my house and getting metrics on things such as a wine cooler to know how much power is being pulled and whether or not I should turn it off if there's no wine in the wine cooler. If I don't need power monitoring and I have no other additional considerations, I typically will go to Zigbee for my smart plugs. I like Zigbee because it strengthens my network, the devices are usually pretty cheap, and they don't use an IP address on my network. Simply knowing that this device does not and cannot have internet connectivity makes me feel like that they're more reliable in my home, and they also function great around internet connected devices such as my modem or router that I might need to restart without Wi-Fi working. If you were to ask me today what smart plug that you need, I would throw out all of these and truly only consider the Sonoff S31 or the Sonoff S31 Lite. The decision to make there is whether or not you have a Zigbee network that you want to strengthen or if you need power monitoring. If you don't need power monitoring, I would suggest the Zigbee. If you don't have Zigbee, I would suggest the Wi-Fi. If you choose the Wi-Fi Sonoff, I strongly encourage you to watch my next video on how to flash Tasmota. For about $10 in additional parts, you can make these plugs function amazing without any additional apps, no delay, and in-depth calibrated power monitoring. Thanks for watching. This ended up being a little longer than I anticipated. Let me know what you think. Is this something you want to see more of? You want to hear my thoughts and thought processes behind purchasing or installing things? I've got a second video coming out here about installing Tasmota on Sonoff. And as I was making that video, I thought, why did I choose the Sonoff and how do I convey that to my viewers? Hopefully this answered that. And for the price, I highly recommend it. I'm very happy and I hope you'll give it a shot. If you have any questions or anything you think I should check out, let me know in the comments.